Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with other update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a ton of huge news to share with all of you today. Today's date is June 21st, 2025, and it's Saturday. Hope you guys are all having a wonderful weekend so far. We've got a lot of news to get into in today's update, and huge information out of Ukraine as last night the Russians launched a massive attack onto the city of Kremenchuk, and a oil refinery was reportedly being targeted. This is going to be in the Poltava region in central Ukraine. So we're going to start off with this news story here on your screen. Russia launches a combined strike on Ukraine's oil industry in Kremenchuk. The Russians attacked Ukraine with 280 aerial targets on the night of the 20th to the 21st of June. Strikes recorded in the city of Kremenchuk, Poltava Oblast, and debris of downed targets fell in 3 locations. Yeah, this was a huge attack. There was missiles and drones going into the city. I've got video footage that looks like it's just being completely carpet bombed. And this is actually the second time over the last week, I believe, that the city of Kremenchuk has been under attack. And I think the Russians are really trying to destroy that massive oil refinery over there. I've got a map that I can show you guys here in just a little bit where it's located at. This is a picture of firefighters trying to put out a major fire that was caused due to these attacks last night. So we've got videos and images coming out from that city overnight. We also have reports that Ukraine launched their own drone attack into Russia last night, and explosions in the Kursk Oblast. Not sure what else was being targeted. It's the only videos I was able to find was coming out of Kursk, but we do have some targets that were being hit over there by drones. And also, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, was speaking in Kiev today, holding a conference with reporters, and he made lots of statements and updates on this war. So I'm going to show you guys that information as well today. So lots of things to get into. We're going to go ahead and jump right into this. Let me start sharing this information with you. We're actually going to hop it over here real quick to a mainstream news report from RBC Ukraine, which has some information regarding this attack last night on Kremenchuk. So it says here, consequences of the attack. Volodymyr Kohut, head of the Poltava Regional Military Administration, reported that in the Kremenchuk district, direct hits and falling debris were recorded at energy infrastructure facilities and open areas. Okay, so it says here direct hits and falling debris. Local media reported powerful fires in Kremenchuk during the night, and smoke was noticeable by morning. According to the State Emergency Service and the Poltava Regional Military Administration, one person sustained moderate injuries. Okay, we did have somebody unfortunately injured in these attacks. Here's a picture of these strikes on Kremenchuk overnight. I'm not sure where this is at. It could be an oil refinery. That looks like a smokestack here in the back. I'm not sure if this is some sort of oil storage tank that could have been struck and maybe caught on fire. Not 100% sure on that, but apparently this was an oil refinery that was being targeted. So this report was actually, again, from RBC Ukraine. It says here, massive attack on Kremenchuk, 40 plus explosions, fires, and cluster bombs reported. And yes, there was cluster munitions reportedly being used over here. I've got pictures coming out on X that I can show you guys here in just a moment. So let's go ahead and hop on over to X now, and let me start sharing some information from independent sources over here. Now, Max 25, massive attack on Kremenchuk, city under drone and missile fire for several hours. Dozens of explosions heard, Radio technology expert Flash suggests that the main target of the Russians could have been the oil refinery. So here's a video coming out. Can't really see too much here, but we can see a massive fire that broke out in Kremenchuk overnight and reportedly could be at the oil refinery that we're looking at here. Because again, I'm pretty sure that's what the Russians were going after over there. The Poltava Oblast has lots of gas and oil infrastructure, so usually if the Russians are targeting Poltava, that's usually what they're going after. We got a picture here as well, and I had this for you guys on the thumbnail just before you got in here. So we had a major fire that broke out here also. Can't really see a whole lot where it's coming from because the bottom of the screen is blurred for protection of this site so the Russians don't adjust their strikes and target it again. But we did have a major fire here that broke out. Could be at the oil refinery. Now we're going to jump on over to a map real quick, and let me show you guys exactly where Kremenchuk is located. So it's in central Ukraine. We're going to zoom in over here to the Poltava Oblast. Here's the city of Poltava right there. Right here on along the Dnieper River. We'll zoom into Kremenchuk. And the city, I believe, has somewhere around 240,000 people or so that live here. It's a pretty large city. And a lot of people were experiencing these explosions last night. So the oil refinery is just to the north of the city up here. And if you look at this thing, it is absolutely massive. So this is what reportedly was being targeted at least twice over the last week. So the Russians were slamming it somewhere around the 15th or the 14th of June. And then just a week later now, on the 21st, we have it being targeted once again, and massive explosions reported over here. So this is a major oil refinery inside of Ukraine. I think it's one of the largest here. And these look very similar to the ones that we see that Ukraine is targeting all the time in Russia. Okay, so you can see lots of these oil storage tanks, very massive facility here. And again, this is going to be in central Ukraine, in the city of Kremenchuk, not too far away from the city of Poltava, in the Poltava Oblast. Okay, so that's right where it is located there. Let's go ahead and hop back on over to X now with Jurgen Nodit. Around 50 explosions for several hours in a row. Russians attacked Kremenchuk in the Poltava region with drones and missiles, according to media reports. The local refinery was presumably hit. The entire city is now shrouded in thick smoke. Local media report that there is hardly any air to breathe. The map shows the approximate route of the drones and missiles during the night. Almost all of them flew towards Kremenchuk. Yeah, I mean, look at this map, guys. Pretty much everything, all these munitions that were going into Ukraine last night, primarily going after Kremenchuk right here. Some of them were heading towards Kiev and also Odessa, but basically everything else. We even had, looks like, maybe some Caliber cruise missiles that were being fired from down here in the Sea of Azov over towards Kremenchuk as well. Okay, so lots of different munitions heading on over to this oil refinery to try to destroy it. So massive attack on Ukraine last night. Looks like we got a video here that didn't want to load, but there we go. Now from Jurgen Nodit. The moment of the Russian attack on Kremenchuk in the Poltava region, explosions and flashes occurred every second, one after another. Europeans spend the sunny weekend in beer gardens and at parties. Yeah, and he's got a point there that many other people are just out enjoying themselves. And this is what's going on inside of Ukraine. I mean, look at the amount of bombings here in the city of Kremenchuk. And I do see some smokestacks. That these look like them right there. So I'm thinking this is most likely the oil refinery just being pounded from all these strikes. Okay, drones and missiles reportedly striking this thing. And the Ukrainians reportedly shot down about 260 out of the 280 munitions that were being fired. But yet we heard that there was 50 explosions over here or more. So these could have been drones that were falling out of the skies after being shot down, yet still exploding. And we had some direct hits over here. Clearly, we can see right here lots of explosions on the ground. Very frightening footage there. Now for more translated, dangerous cluster munition remnants were found in the Poltava region after last night's Russian attack. Local police warn the fragments, metal spheres about 10 centimeters wide, resemble toys or balls, posing a serious risk to children who might mistake them for harmless objects. Yeah, these were the cluster munition balls that were being found on the ground that the Russians were firing over here. Maybe these are unexploded casings of these cluster munitions. So very dangerous. Imagine if little kids come out here and think that it's a toy, like a ball they can throw around. They try to throw it, it might explode in their hands, or if it hits a wall or something, it could blow up. So it looks like they're warning the regional military administration in the area is warning citizens not to touch these objects and just report them so they can collect them for safety purposes. So very scary pictures coming out here. Now for Bliskovka, Russian strikes on the Donetsk region injured 7 people, reports the head of the regional military administration, Filashkin. Occupiers hit the region with FABs, which are guided bombs. They're like glide bombs, basically, that strike Ukraine all the time. Artillery and FPV drones. Okay, so lots of attacks reported here also in the Donetsk region. This is closer to the front line. Looks like we had people's homes being destroyed. And I do apologize. These pictures are a little blurry because for some reason the resolution is kind of small here. But just some damage reported to homes in the Donetsk region also from the Russians. Now for Max 25, attack on Russia and occupied territories of Ukraine mapped from drone bomber. Okay, this was coming out last night as Ukraine was launching an attack into Russia as well. And I don't have too much information on what was being hit. It's really most likely because there's just so much information directed to the Middle East right now that a lot of people are not covering the Ukraine war. So there could have been, massive hits over here. I didn't really see a whole lot of information on what was struck, but we know for sure there was explosions in the Kursk Oblast, and you can see some of these drones crossing through Kursk right here, this set and this set also. So now moving on to Max 25, more Bavovna and Elgov. Okay, this is going to be a city up in the Kursk Oblast. Got a video I can show you guys here. It's about 45 seconds. We'll take a look at this. You're going to see explosions from drones over here. There's a picture also.
Ой-ой-ой-ой-ой-ой-ой. Ой-ой-ой-ой-ой-ой-ой. Иди сюда, сука. Иди нахуй сюда. Ой.
Вот, нас пролетает. Еще один летит туда.
Ебать.
Вот, разгоняется. Разгоняется нахуй. Блять, садись нахуй, пизду. Садись.
Сейчас должен.
Опять подстанция.
Ух.
Опять туда же.
Блять.
Это уже попали.
Ух.
Подстанция.
Ух.
Подстанция.
All right, we'll go ahead and stop it there. So yeah, we can see some sort of fire here in the distance in the city of Elgov. There was probably one strike from a drone over here. Soon after, we had another one crashing and exploding over here also in the city of Elgov, and these people were able to capture it. We're standing in the streets over here. Here's a picture also showing one of the detonations of these drones entering into the city of Elgov. Now for Max 25, in Kursk region, defense forces are carrying out targeted strikes on the occupiers using Banshee Jet 80 drones. Okay, so this came out today on June 21st, earlier this morning, and I'm not sure if this strike took place over the last 24 hours or not, but what we're going to see here is a Banshee jet drone coming from Ukraine, smashing into most likely a military target up in the Kursk region. Take a look at this. All right, so I wonder what that was. Maybe it was some sort of ammunition hub or something in the Kursk Oblast. I mean, we know the Russians are they're stacked up there in the Kursk region, as right now they're attacking the Sumy Oblast, which is just south of Kursk into Ukrainian territory. So it looks like this drone directly struck a building over here. I'm not sure exactly what it was that was being targeted, but we can see massive panic from all these people after this drone slams into that building. Pretty crazy footage right there. Now, Vicegrad 24, breaking, Russian suicide drone swarms are flying towards Kiev. Now, this information was coming out earlier this morning, so this would be like later in the day, getting closer to the evening of the time zone in Ukraine. So, looks like the Russians are attacking Ukraine once again. We've got more Russian drones heading over towards Kiev right now. So, if I get information on that later, I'll do another update for you guys. Now, Max 25, there was a threat of Storm Shadow missiles in Russia during the day in the Bryansk region. Something started burning by strange coincidence. Perhaps there was a strike on an S-400. Now, an S-400 is an air defense system that the Russians used. Yeah, apparently there was threat of Storm Shadow missiles being fired in the Bryansk region, or at least into Russia. And Fire Maps, NASA firms, was reporting a major fire that was up in the Bryansk region. So just a little bit north of Ukraine, right next to Kursk. So there could have been a strike over here. Maybe the Ukrainians carried out a HIMARS attack on an S-400 or something like that. But allegedly, these are pictures just indicating that there was a strike over here in this area. And we had these NASA fire maps showing where these strikes were taking place at, okay, up here in the Bryansk Oblast of Russia. Now from NOL reports, Ukrainian forces struck a Russian equipment storage site in Velika, Shishivka, sorry guys, Donetsk region, and the 24th Spetsnaz Brigade Unit 55433 was targeted. Okay, so we had an equipment storage site that was struck as well from the Ukrainians. You see these KAMAZ trucks right here. These are transport trucks that the Russians use. This whole, looks like a little barn or something burned down to the ground after it was struck from Ukraine. So this is going to be in the Donetsk region, an occupied territory by the Russians. So the Ukrainians carrying out a massive strike. And this information actually came out yesterday, June 20th, but I wasn't able to squeeze it into our update because it came out after I had published that video. Just wanted to let you guys know about this. Sometime over the last 24, 48 hours is when this strike was carried out on all this military equipment. Now from Visioner, big news in Sumy Oblast, Ukrainian forces have liberated the village of Andriivka. Okay, this is a very big report, and we've been hearing that the Ukrainians are gaining the advantage against the Russians, as the Russians have been pushing into the Sumy Oblast just over the border from Kursk, as I mentioned earlier, and they were gaining ground very quickly towards the city of Sumy. And what we're hearing is the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back. They have regained several settlements over the last week or so, and Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, also announced that they have prevented the Russians from moving forward in the Sumy Oblast. So far, they are fighting back, and we're hearing that they're regaining ground right now. So that's very good. They've taken back the village of Andriivka in the Sumy Oblast. Now, from Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the president of Ukraine, speaking to journalists, I said, during the repatriation of bodies, 20 of those returned to us as Ukrainian fallen soldiers turned out to be Russians. One was a foreign mercenary. This lie is documented. Some of the bodies even had Russian passports. So we've been talking about this over the last few days. There's been thousands of Ukrainian bodies supposedly that are coming back from the Russian side, and what we've been hearing from the administration out of Ukraine is that the Russians are mixing in some of their own soldiers or even Russian citizens in with these Ukrainian bodies, that they're not fully getting back just Ukrainians. And I'm not sure exactly why they're doing that, but the Ukrainians believe it's a part of some sort of information campaign to make it appear as if they're, giving these soldiers back, but sometimes there's Russians mixed in with these. So they're finding Russian passports and whatnot on some of these soldiers. Some of them are even wearing Russian uniforms. So crazy situation, what is going on over here. Now, Max 25, Russians will not be able to really support Iran because they do not have the strength, says Zelenskyy. In the near future, the Russians want to receive 860 additional machines for the military complex. They are supplied by more than 50 companies from China, Taiwan, Germany, Czech Republic, South Korea, Japan, etc. So isn't that crazy that the Russians are still continuing to get support from the same partners that support Ukraine? I mean, that is just unthinkable to even try to understand that Ukraine is getting support from all these nations, yet at the same time the Russians are getting the same support. So a lot of these countries are fueling both sides of this war, which is absolutely nuts to me. But Zelenskyy is also stating that apparently the Russians are not going to be able to support Iran in their fight against pretty much the United States and Israel, but mostly Israel just carrying out these strikes right now. The U.S. might get involved here very soon, maybe as soon as this weekend. And the Russians don't have the strength, is what Zelenskyy says. That's why they're not getting involved. And, look at what's going on inside of Ukraine. They're really struggling to take land against the Ukrainians. So, yeah, I mean, they're so tied up with this war right now. What can they really offer to the Iranians? Now, for more translated, when Putin says where a Russian soldier steps, it's ours, he's talking about Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltics, Moldova, the Caucasus, and countries like Kazakhstan, says Zelenskyy. Yeah, so Zelensky's actually responding to a statement from Putin yesterday. Putin was speaking at a conference, and this is what he was saying here. All of Ukraine is ours. And it says here, he falsely insists we never question Ukraine's sovereignty, showing imperial vibes. He added, where Russia's soldier steps, it's ours. So basically what he was saying was that there's like an old saying within Russia that if a Russian soldier steps foot on any land, even if it's not their territory, they consider it their land. So he was kind of saying that Ukraine is all part of Russia, that, even the fact they're fighting inside of Ukraine right now, they consider Ukraine as part of Russia. So that explains exactly why the Russians want to completely dominate and take over Ukraine. And Zelensky's also warning that Russia's not only talking about Ukraine, but actually other nations beyond that, which we've been hearing that for a while now. Now, for Bliskovka, today, 695,000 Russian troops are on the territory of Ukraine, says Zelenskyy, plus the Kursk, Belgorod directions where they are opposite Kharkiv, opposite Sumy. There are about 52,000 more from the Sumy direction, the president noted. The total number of attacks per day is up to 200 along the entire front line. So here's just reports about the attacks from the Russians, and 695,000. That's crazy. Almost 700,000 troops on the territory of Ukraine. I mean, can you imagine having that sizable amount of force attacking your nation repeatedly, and the Ukrainians are still holding them back? I mean, we have been hearing over the last few weeks that the Russians are gaining some ground. They're not moving very quickly, but nonetheless, they have been moving forward, especially over the last month in May, is what was reported out of Ukrainian media. So now for Bliskovka, some more statements by Zelenskyy at the meeting with journalists. On the possibility of a meeting with the Russian Federation in Istanbul, the Russians will definitely drag out the process to postpone sanctions. The president does not rule out his presence at the NATO summit. The Russians want to sell success in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions, but there have been no changes in these areas over the past week. The information about the destruction of the Patriot air defense system is not true. 39 Russian companies are involved in the production of the Oreshnik, of which 21 are not under sanctions. So that's interesting. They should probably sanction these companies that are trying to produce the Oreshnik missiles that can be fired into Ukraine. So maybe we might see some sanctions coming down onto those companies here very soon. But yeah, there was a report here also today that the Russians were stating they destroyed a Patriot air defense system, but Zelenskyy saying that did not happen. That would be really bad because Ukraine only has a few of these. So reportedly that did not take place according to Ukraine. And just several other statements here they were making, or he was making here while he was speaking to reporters. Here's a picture of him speaking in Kiev today. Now from Ukrainian Review, labor migrants as cannon fodder. Russia forcibly recruits Central Asian citizens for the war, according to the GUR. That's Ukraine's military intelligence directorate. Citizens of Central Asian countries, in particular Uzbekistan and Tajikistan, are becoming targets of forced mobilization carried out by Russian security forces. So this is something we've been hearing for a long time as well, that the Russians are recruiting, mercenaries from all kinds of different countries. And there's even schemes that are set up out of India and multiple other nations where they try to draw people into Russia and say they're going to get a job, they're going to get paid really well, they're going to get housing and whatnot. It's going to sound like a lavish lifestyle to them compared to where they're coming from. And then when they show up in Russia, all of a sudden they get thrown into the military and to the front line. And there's been multiple nations like India, for example, that have been calling for their citizens to come back. So it looks like the Ukrainians were able to retrieve some of the documents, passports, or identification cards of some of these soldiers, finding out that these are actually not even people from Russia. So Russia's doing this for a major reason, to not have to mobilize more soldiers out of their own nation. And we've been having reports like yesterday that their economy is crumbling right now. They're having a massive labor shortage. So they're trying to continue this war effort as much as possible without using their own citizens. Now for Max 25, Russia has accumulated over 1,950 strategic missiles of various types, according to the GUR. 500 ballistic missiles Iskander-M, 300 cruise missiles Iskander-K, 260 cruise missiles KH-101, 280 cruise missiles KH-22 and KH-32, 400 cruise missiles Caliber, 150 KH-47M2 Kinzhal hypersonic aeroballistic missiles, 60 North Korean-made KN-23 ballistic missiles. Okay, this is bad news also because that means there's going to be more missiles going into Ukraine. And recently, we have been seeing a lot more frequent missile attacks. Now, what we saw maybe 6 months ago was every now and then, maybe once a month or once every 3 to 4 weeks, something like that, we would have a massive attack on Ukraine. Somewhere around 50 to 100 missiles would be fired, along with hundreds of drones. Now we're seeing more frequent attacks. We'll see like maybe 20 missiles being fired here and there, like last night. There was somewhere around a dozen or more missiles, I think, that were attacking into Kremenchuk. So we're probably going to be seeing more missiles attacking into Ukraine with these kind of reports like that. So not good news for Ukraine. Now from Special Kursk Cat, Germany and Canada have agreed to fund the production of Ukrainian anti-Shahed drones, according to President Zelenskyy. Their production is ready to be financed by Germany. Relevant agreements have been reached with Federal Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Canada will also support their production. This was discussed during a meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Okay, this is a huge report. So anti-Shahed drones. These are drones that will most likely be interceptors, from what I understand, to bring down the incoming Shahed drones. And we know these Shahed drones are just a menace inside of Ukraine. They cause massive damage and a loss to human life. So if they could find a way to basically make these drones no longer exist, that's huge. As the Russians have been ramping up their production of these Garan-type drones that are very similar to Shaheds that are produced in Russia. We also heard recently that the North Koreans are going to send something like 25,000 workers into Russia to help mass produce these drones as well and other military equipment. So drones are becoming a menace and very dangerous inside of Ukraine, and it looks like they are working on a program right now to produce these interceptor drones that can bring them down and no longer make them a threat, so that is good. Now, Max 25, Ukraine has begun production of domestic radars for detecting UAVs, according to the consultant of the Come Back Alive Foundation. Such radar stations are already being supplied to the armed forces of Ukraine, namely for drone interceptor units. Okay, so not only are they producing interceptor drones, but they're going to be having radar detection systems for detecting UAVs that are incoming. So this is good as well. They also need radars to be able to detect them before they come into their airspace or come near any towns. And hopefully they'll be able to start bringing down a lot more of these. And so far, we've been seeing that. We've been, over the past month or so, we've seen very high success rates and destructions of these drones. So that means that Ukraine is getting more technical and accurate at destroying these with the equipment that they have. Now, Max 25 again. Ukraine has handed over to the U.S. a list of weapons it is ready to purchase, according to EP. Srividenko and Yermak have handed over to U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent a list of weapons that Ukraine is ready to purchase. The list also includes Patriot air defense systems. Now, this is something we've been hearing a lot, that Zelenskyy was going to be meeting with Trump to talk to him about getting some weapons from the U.S. Ukraine wants to actually buy them. They're not asking for a handout at all. They're going to offer money to purchase weapon systems, and a big one is going to be Patriot air defense systems. We know that they need more air defense in their nation from all these attacks, especially ballistic missiles that are being fired into their territory. They could utilize those. So yeah, apparently they sent a list over to the U.S., and we should be hearing about this very soon, whether the U.S. is going to supply them. Now, that's the big question. Is Trump going to allow it or not? I'm thinking it's going to be a difficult process, but you never know. Maybe it will get approved. Now, from NOAA reports, Putin demands Ukraine recognize the so-called referendums in occupied territories. He warns that ignoring them could lead to renewed conflict. He also calls for Ukrainian neutrality and protection of Russian-speaking and pro-Russian residents. Same old story. Yeah, this was Putin speaking in an interview again over the last 24 hours. So he's calling on Ukraine to recognize the referendums of occupied territories, basically saying that, these territories are now Russian. This is another way of saying that Ukraine needs to pull back from the front line, give up the territories that they're fighting for right now. That includes Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson regions of Ukraine, and just recognize the referendums that were held. Okay, so just a statement coming out from Putin today. This is what he stated here in this interview. Now, for more translated, Ukrainian Telegram channels reports Russians have a new drone to spot air defenses and mobile groups in border and frontline zones. Its mission: scout routes for Shahed drones and track air defense activity designed to look like a Shahed to detect mobile groups. It flies at 1 to 3 kilometers with a 1.2 gigahertz analog video transmitter reaching 50 plus kilometers, controlled via ELRS. So this is reportedly a new type of drone that the Russians are using that look very similar to a Shahed. To me, it looks a little bit smaller, though, because I know the Shaheds are very large, so these are probably smaller-looking drones that kind of look like a Shahed. But there's a video here that came out showing them utilizing this thing, and they fly with it. They fly it over Ukraine. It's got a little camera on the bottom, and it can spot where Ukrainian air defense positions are at, air mobile fire groups. So that way, probably the Russians can launch attacks. So it kind of seems like a scout drone to me, or reconnaissance drone that probably is very cheap to produce because it looks pretty tiny as well. So that's another new threat that Ukraine's got to deal with moving forward here in the future. Now, from NOAA reports, Ukraine repelled a massive overnight air assault, 280 targets launched, including 272 Shahed drones, Caliber, Iskander-K, and Kinzhal missiles. Air defense down 260 threats, with Poltava region, especially Kremenchuk, as the main target. Debris fell in 3 locations. So here's the report. Yeah, 260 out of 280. I don't know exactly which ones are shot down. That information hasn't been given out for some reason. But Ukraine reportedly downed a good majority of these aerial targets that were incoming. Okay, missiles and drones targeting into Ukraine last night. Now, from Kyiv Independent, these are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of June 21st, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In our final update of the day, Russia's losses as of June 21st, 1,060 troops, 5 AFVs, 116 vehicles and fuel tanks, 1 tank, 19 artillery systems, and 123 UAVs. Okay, so these are some of the smallest numbers that we've seen recently. Now, we have been seeing very low numbers across the board, but literally nothing on this column over here. And then on this side, vehicles and fuel tanks, about average. Usually we've been seeing around 100, but AFVs and tanks, almost nothing. Only 5 AFVs and only 1 tank here. Troop numbers right about the same. We've been seeing that sitting right around 1,000 for several weeks now. And artillery systems down low. Usually we're seeing 30, 40 or more. I think we had 40-something yesterday. So only 19 destroyed over the last 24 hours. And that's about it, aside from UAVs, which they bring down a lot of those every single day. Okay, guys, so just some updates here on what's been destroyed on the Russian side. And I want to thank you guys so much for being here till the end of this video on today's date, June 21st, 2025 on Saturday. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And just a friendly reminder that tomorrow I will not be here, most likely, unless we get some major information out of the Middle East or something, or this war with Ukraine. As typically I am off on Sundays, so unless something big happens, I will not be here tomorrow. It will be my allocated day off to spend some time with myself and my family, but I will be back here on Monday on the 23rd of June. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in for this update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell, that way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.